Good afternoon. This is Peter Quinn, Senior Vice President with Kidder Matthews here in San Diego. And I'm joined today by Nathan Motor. Nathan is a partner in principal at London Motor Advisors. They are real estate experts advising developers, investors, financial institutions, municipalities, and all sorts of other folks that have an interest in commercial real estate and residential. Today, though, we're going to be talking to Nathan about what's going on in the housing market. We're going to touch on San Diego since both of us reside here in San Diego, but we may hit some other markets as well. Nathan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you, Peter.
Yep, nice to see you as well. As a full disclosure, I have known Nathan's partner, Gary London, for about 35 years. Gary has been a part of the San Diego real estate development marketplace for all of that time in a variety of capacities. And so it's great to be with you today, Nathan. What is the housing problem we have here in San Diego?
Well, that's a big question. I think nationwide, the easy answer is we're just not building enough housing units, and we can't build fast enough to keep up with population growth. I think in San Diego, we have a little bit different take on the housing market. I think, especially in the coastal communities, we're not building certain types of housing that we need, specifically family housing and family housing, meaning 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms. What we're finding in these dense areas, especially in San Diego and coastal markets, is when property becomes so expensive and you have to build development that is 4 stories, 5 stories, 6 stories, most of it is flats and small units. And I think it's no surprise to anybody who's a renter trying to go out and rent that the unit sizes just seem to be shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And that's a function of how expensive things are to develop here in San Diego and in California. So as a result, we've seen smaller units be developed and not the type of family housing that we need. And I think that's really put a lot of pressure on housing prices, specifically in California, which has led to all the stories and headlines that we see, that millennials and younger people that can't afford California or the coast, they're all moving to Raleigh-Durham or to Austin, Texas, or to Salt Lake. There's no coincidence there. So I think that's specifically, in my opinion, the problem with the housing market is we're not building the types of housing for all types of communities and for demographics. It's really lacking in some areas.
Seems to me like the disconnect is the applause that the local media gives our politicians for approving new housing initiatives, trying to encourage low-income housing development. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that, yeah, we're getting, I think we peaked at 6,000 units delivered in 2021. That was 6,000 predominantly 1-bedroom studio apartments, right?
Yeah, the 6,000 units was for multifamily. So if you add in the small amount of townhomes and single family homes we probably did about 9,500 units, maybe almost 10,000. But, 6,000 housing units of all multifamily flats is way above. I mean, it's pretty much flipped from how we used to build, which most of it is single family and townhomes, and now it's mainly apartments. But yeah, I mean, it's tough for politicians because I think, they get in office, they're in office for maybe 4 years and 5 years, and they're not housing experts. They have staff looking at different initiatives and different things that can pass, but a lot of it is just kind of a Band-Aid approach to housing development. None of them really do anything. And even collectively, all the different bills don't produce the magnitude of housing that we need. And, it's hard when we've curbed growth and curbed development opportunities. If you look in the past, the way California has grown and master plan communities, it was really easy to add housing because you would add 6,000 units in one community and then 5,000 units in another community. And all of a sudden you've got thousands of units. But now we don't have any more of those master plans. And so you have no choice but to build in And yes, there are downtowns that could put in hundreds of units, but a lot of these small developers are doing 50 units, 100 units. It's nowhere near the velocity that we had in, prior.
They're not making any more land, Nathan. That ship has sailed in certainly all coastal communities, but you and I seen some very significant projects come up through the political and entitlement process in San Diego in the last just 2 or 3 years. 7,000 units in northeast Escondido, 3 or 4,000 units in East County, Santee, and we need single family housing. Or as you pointed out earlier, we're going to have these young men and women who are trying to form their own families having to move out because there's unsuitable choices in the marketplace. Any way to correct that?
Not unless we figure out a way to build lots of housing and build it fast. I mean, just to keep up with population growth, we probably need 12 to 14,000 housing units a year. And most of it needs to be family housing. So I acknowledge that we might not build the traditional single family home anymore, but we have to have some kind of an alternative in a townhome format, something that is a dwelling unit that gives somebody a little tiny space, whether it's a courtyard or something, and can provide 3 bedrooms for people and for families to expand. But it's a very tall task, and when we no longer have development land that is able to accommodate large master plans, it's hard to come by.
And infill, which is really the direction that we're seeing capable development entities pursue, faces its own challenges for entitlement. As you say, we're taking a half a block downtown and putting 20 stories of housing on it. That creates a lot of angst locally, the neighbors. It creates a lot of angst at City Hall, but we need as many choices as possible for both the investment development community as we do for the users. And now we're in a situation where the financial markets are making it very difficult to raise the necessary capital to do any housing that requires the sort of massive capital that a 100 or 200 unit project.
Yeah, I mean, when we've got a housing shortage and there's so much demand, the market's going to build whatever's most profitable and whatever can get the highest value. And that is right now smaller units. And I mean, even these small micro units and small studios, you're still paying a couple $1,000, $3,000 in some areas for a small studio. And when you talk about the homeless crisis and things like that, it's hard to, I mean, that's a very steep rent for somebody just trying to find a place to live. So when we have a shortage, there's demand for all types of housing across the board. You need family homes, you need, small units, you need large units, you need senior housing. I mean, we need all types of housing everywhere in the state of California, especially in Southern California. But right now, because the way that regulation is and where we have to develop with very expensive housing costs. So when you're building 4 stories to 6 stories, that's a lot more expensive than building a townhome product that's 2 stories or maybe a 3-story product or single family homes. So we have to have higher rents to afford the higher cost of construction. The other aspect is all the layers and all the red tape that goes along with that. The community wants parks. They want different impact fees. They want the community improved. We want affordable housing. So all that adds to housing costs on the production. And there's just not a lot of relief for rents or for prices, because at the end of the day, development has to pay for that. And there's not a lot of profit in it afterwards. I mean, it's just returning to the investors. There's not a lot of wiggle room. And I don't have the best feeling that we're going to see some massive housing price correction or rent correction. I mean, something dramatic would have to happen, like in the 1990s, where General Dynamics left and took thousands of jobs with them. I don't see thousands of jobs leaving San Diego. So if we're going to continue to grow, and we're growing in a very expensive housing format in terms of construction costs, we've got to find different ways to add different types of housing, because it is, it's quite unsustainable, I guess.
Yeah, I read an article over the weekend. We were chatting a little bit about it before we started this broadcast. Legislators up in Sacramento are looking at legislation that would be aimed towards the middle market, those young families that are seeking housing, and nobody is building that today. It's high end, where most of the profit is generated for the developer investor. It's low end that requires subsidies, which are very, very hard to get and very tricky to get. I mean, you have to be a real pro to be in line for that 9%, 4% financing alternatives that are out there for the affordable housing guys. Is there anybody going to step in that you can see to handle that middle market?
I think, especially with this new legislation, it's going to be very few and far between. And the reason is because you still have to do the low income affordable housing. It's just you can get an extra bonus if you're doing the middle income too. So it's almost like a double whammy, where you're incurring additional costs because you have to do affordable housing in the first place, and that has a negative impact on value. And then it would have a similar negative impact, although not as severe, if you do middle income. A lot of these policies, these density bonuses, are made up. There's not a lot of thought behind it in terms of the percentages that are granted. And you could probably max out the total density of the site by just doing the regular affordable housing density bonus. So you might not even need the middle income one. For this to properly work, and I think, in today's world of equitable, and that's a very popular word, we're not even given any equitable thought to the middle income and to these families that make six figures, and you're a policeman and a firefighter or a school teacher, but you don't qualify for affordable housing. So because of that, that's the population that's being left behind. I think policy should encourage, or maybe look at it each year and maybe make sure that it's half and half of these middle income units and affordable units that are being built. But right now, the way that it sounds is that everything's focused on, you have to do the affordable housing traditionally, and then if you want to, you could do middle income. And in my opinion, the middle income is still being left behind. I don't think that's going to result in a lot more middle income housing units.
Yeah, it's it's a trick, and it's a trick that hasn't been mastered yet. That's for sure. But housing demand is not going away in San Diego, is it? I think we're how many units would we be required to build to meet demand in San Diego?
Yeah, well, I think I said prior, so just to keep up with the population demand, you're probably between 12 and 14,000. If you're trying to address the housing shortage, we should probably be hitting 20,000 units every single year for 10 years. And then we'll see a real big impact. Will that happen? I don't have a good feeling about that. But those are the numbers. The problem is with San Diego is it's a very popular place. You could, for all these reality TV stars and all that stuff, they all want to live in San Diego. They don't want to be in LA anymore. And you hear about them moving down here, and San Diego's becoming a big filming location, and they want to capitalize on that. The other thing that is not being talked about is, not only do we have population growth here internally, just from naturally having children and births over deaths, but nobody in the state talks about the influx of retirees that move here to be closer to their kids. There's lots of families coming, even though people are leaving the state, that are coming to the state because they may have sold the farm in Colorado or something, and they want to move to California to be close to their kids. And guess what? They're going to help their kids with a $500,000 down payment to buy their first home. So there's kind of this shadow market as well of retirees that are moving here. And you could just talk to realtors in the marketplace. When you look at homes that are single story floor plans, in some neighborhoods, those come as a premium because you have this older baby boom retiree generation coming here. They don't want to walk upstairs anymore. So there is that kind of a shadow market that I think is putting even more pressure on prices, that we do have people moving here The problem is it's the people that have means and they have money, and that will, that can very likely just keep prices high.
And it will, it's funny, I'm a little older than you are, Nathan, but both of our neighborhoods has seen an influx of young families. And I look at the 3 or 4 families that moved into my neighborhood over the last 5 years, and I'm going, wow, at their age, I could have never afforded to be in this neighborhood. Of course, when I was their age, houses in my neighborhood were a lot less expensive, but it's remarkable the resources that this next wave of buyers following on the heels, as you say, their baby boomer parents and other family members. It's remarkable to see, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the number of homes on the market to be sold, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head for single family homes, if you go back prior to COVID, there might have been 8,000 to 10,000 homes available for sale in any given month. And today there's only, it's around 2,000 units. So when you only have to find 2,000 buyers in the market, not 10,000, people get weeded out, and those 2,000 buyers are going to be the ones that can bid up the prices and are willing to pay the highest price. So as long as inventory is restricted, that's going to have an impact on housing prices. The other aspect is when you look at the mortgages, a lot of people, right, have locked in their low mortgages. 80% of the loans nationwide are under 5%. Nobody's going to be selling their home anytime soon unless there's a life-changing circumstance or an economic circumstance that they have to. So that inventory level will continue to be low. So like I said, when you don't need to find as many buyers in the marketplace, those prices could be propped up.
Yeah, I am very glad that I moved here 35 years ago, left the LA Orange County basin, and made San Diego my home. Nathan, it is a real pleasure getting together with you today. And, we talk about a lot of topics around the office water cooler. Hope we get to do this again. And please enjoy the rest of your day.
I would like that. Thanks for having me. Good seeing you.
Thanks, Nathan.